He touched down, bowed his head, and crossed a line most royals never will. Prince Harry's unannounced visit to Kiev days after a quiet hour with his father at Clarence House and a wreath laid at his grandmother's tomb wasn't merely a trip. It was a picture. And in Windsor world, pictures bruise harder than words. Start with what's plain. The Duke of Sussex spent 4 days in Britain, saw the King in person for the first time in 19 months, paid respects at St. George's Chapel, then moved east under the Invictus banner to meet wounded Ukrainians and the teams rebuilding their lives. By his account, he asked the UK government, checked in at home, accepted an invitation from Kiev, and went. It fits his pattern. Harry has made veterans' recovery his lane. Invictus isn't a campaign, it's his spine. Now place that picture against another, the one inside Kensington Palace. For 2 years, William has been the senior royal voice on Ukraine, statements of support, meetings with refugees, visits to British troops in Poland and Estonia, the steady drum of duty that never strays beyond the red lines set by security and state. Reports say he hoped to go to Ukraine itself, reports say the answer was no. Not a moral judgment, an institutional one. The heir is governed by risk matrices and constitutional optics. Some doors stay locked however much the man behind them cares. He went as far forward as he was allowed to go. Then his younger brother appeared in Kiev. If you think that doesn't sting, you haven't been paying attention since Eton. This is bigger than logistics. Heir and spare isn't a slogan, it's a blueprint both men were handed at birth. Harry wrote it down, beloved brother and arch-nemesis, and whether you liked the phrasing or not, you recognized the weather in it. William's life is timetables and red boxes, guardrails and clearances. Harry's is a private passport tied to a public cause. One submits requests through government channels and accepts the verdict. The other, now a private citizen with a security team and a mission, can sometimes move where the heir cannot. The titles have changed. The equation hasn't. So was Harry wrong to go? That's the wrong question. The work in Kiev is real and urgent. The men and women he met aren't backdrops, they are the point. Rehabilitation doesn't end when the headlines fade, it begins there, prosthetics fitted, trauma treated, dignity rebuilt one task at a time. If a prince can put a camera on that process and recruit donors, surgeons, and political will, use him. 2 truths can share a room. Harry's presence was worthy, and for the palace, unhelpful. Not because of what he did on the ground but because, at a glance, the images say something too simple to fight. One brother in a war capital, the other not allowed. Allowed is a cruel little word to attach to a future king who has served, trained, and tried to step toward danger when policy would not let him. We've lived this loop before. Harry flew to Afghanistan, William was kept back. The calculus then was national insurance. It is now, too. You can dislike the arithmetic and still accept why it's done. That doesn't make the human part hurt less. Zoom out and study their weeks as a pair of frames. In Britain, William and Catherine kept the village hall tempo the late Queen perfected: tea, laughter, a WI room full of practical kindness. It looks gentle because it is, and because it works. The country needs its heir at human height. Across a border, Harry kept his own promise to show up where the air smells of disinfectant and determination. It looks dramatic because war leaves you no other way to look. Inside the family, the silence is the headline. There was time for an hour with the king. There wasn't 5 minutes for 2 brothers 8 miles apart to find a neutral room. Perhaps that's security. Perhaps that's choice. Either way, it's the absence at the center of every story. If you're William, you swallow the optics and keep to your lane. You don't freelance foreign policy. You don't overrule security advice so a photograph feels fair. Your staff know it, you know it. Still, our species is prideful. William has spent 2 years talking about Ukraine with sincerity and focus, meeting families who have lost everything, standing with troops who stand for all of us, and now the loop the world will replay is his brother in Kiev while he works a safer map square. That's not a failure. It's a constraint. But constraints pinch. If you're Harry, you do the work you built your life around and refuse to make your itinerary a referendum on a family you can't fix in a week. He asked, he was invited, he went. The wounded don't care about court circulars, they care if you turn up. He did. If you're the palace, you grip the table and ride out the cycle. You emphasize that the heir's movements are governed by advice, not appetite. You remind anyone who will listen that William's public program on Ukraine has been consistent and quiet. You let friends of the court note, gently, that a private citizen can accept risks a sovereign-in-waiting cannot. You decline to feed words like fury. You stick to service and keep the family business inside the family, where it belongs. There's a hard truth underneath the drama. Ukraine isn't a backdrop for a royal rivalry, it's an open wound for a country still burying its young. If a prince can carry attention into rehab wards and prosthetics labs, let the spotlight work. And let it also be true that the future king's absence from Kiev is not a lack of heart, it is the price of the constitutional settlement we claim to admire. The crown's neutrality and the government's primacy in foreign affairs aren't just phrases, they're rails. They keep a constitutional monarchy on the track it sits upon. Where does this leave the brothers? Not closer. A single trip won't deepen a rift that already runs canyon deep, it will harden the stories each man tells himself. For William, duty that says no when the blood says go. For Harry, freedom that lets him stand where his brother cannot, and the loneliness that comes when the cameras leave and the night nurses take over. And Catherine? Don't miss her in the corner of the frame. When the air is thick with speculation, she adds ballast, clothes chosen to signal steadiness, a smile that reads as ease rather than performance, a hand on William's arm that says together. She is the monarchy's simplest proof of concept: show up, listen well, leave people feeling seen. In a week of heat, she lowered the room's temperature. There's also the matter of memory. The late Queen ran a 7-decade masterclass in staying above the fray, and both men, though they express it differently, are trying to honor her method. William does it by keeping the work small and near, because that is the scale at which constitutional monarchy still touches daily life. Harry does it by keeping his promise to a community that needed him before tabloids did. They are different keys on the same instrument, the melody clashes when they play at once, but you can hear the tune if you listen past the noise. A final note on optics versus outcomes. The image of Harry in Kiev will travel faster and farther than any briefing note William signs this week. That's how images behave. But outcomes are slow things: a grant approved for a veterans clinic, a prosthetics program scaled, a government reminded that fatigue is not a policy. On that axis, both brothers can help, one by keeping the cause visible at the edge of a war zone, the other by keeping the nation's attention from drifting at home. If they can't coordinate, the work can still add up. So yes, the day belonged to the camera. It caught a younger son in a place his older brother couldn't go and invited the laziest reading imaginable. But step back and the picture complicates. Two men raised for different roles are doing what those roles now allow. The country they were born to serve needs both kinds of service. If you're listening for the line that matters most, it isn't fuming, jealous, or snub. It's the sentence the late Queen lived by, and that both men awkwardly, imperfectly keep trying to remember. Be seen when it helps, be quiet when it heals, and remember that service is larger than you are. Everything else is commentary.